Thank you everyone for joining for another podcast episode. This is, I guess, a bit of a bonus episode, and one that I think is actually going to be really important for anyone to listen to who's 18 to 30 and just in pursuit of the heart of God and just want to know what that looks like on a day-to-day level, kind of locally or wherever you are, just on a day-to-day level, what it looks like to pursue the heart of God just every day. And so I'm thankful and blessed to be able to be here with Peter Brind. Want to say hello?
Hello.
Peter Brind Snr. And this is our actual first podcast episode together. It's been me and Steve so far. But yeah, this is the first one with Peter. Peter is Stephen's dad, as you'll find out in either the YouTube series and through other podcast episodes. And I'm just, thankful to be able to sit here and just kind of listen and kind of eke out some of the major things from your life. I'm thankful to have walked with you for, I guess, about 2 years now.
Yeah.
And just walked, closely with both you and Sandra. And just thankful to have laughed with you guys, thankful to have cried with you guys, and received so many blessings of you guys just praying for me and just keeping me going. So, so thankful for you, Pete. So thankful for this opportunity just to kind of get look at your life and just hopefully inspire some of the younger generation, which is what you've been doing for years and years. Yeah. So we're going to begin with early Peter Brind. Locationally, where were you? What did it look like to grow up? What kind of context were you growing up in, and what was family life like for you, Peter?
Well, I was born in Luton, that's 30 miles north of London, and my dad was an absolute inspiration to me, particularly because he was a great evangelist. He was converted in the RAF, and he was amazing. He used to cycle twice a week to our local RAF camp. I say local, it was 12 miles. And he used to go across there twice a week, speaking to people in the barrack rooms there about Jesus. And then on a Wednesday and every weekend, these airmen would pour into our home. And I guess that was my first impressions, really, of what God must be like. Yeah. He must be a God who's interested in people and a God who just loves company. That's the kind of message I got from my dad. But it wasn't the only thing he did. My mum and dad opened their home up. There were always loads of people in the house. There were always people around having meals with us. There were people living with us. All that kind of stuff. And I guess that really was the foundation of my life. Yeah. And then it was really in my very early teens. I think my dad said to me when I was 10, "I've got a challenge for you, son." So I said, okay. He knew I was always up for a challenge. He said, "I want you to read through the New Testament." And I thought, okay, I'll have a go. Yeah. So I started, and I confess there were bits that were okay. I quite liked the Gospels. The Acts was a bit exciting. I was 10. And it was in the King James Authorized version, so it was lots of doeths and dusts and all that kind of stuff. And I made it to the end, and I told him, "I've done it, Dad. I've got to the end." And then he set me another challenge. I can't remember how long it took me, but by my really early teens, probably 12, maybe 13, I started to read right through the Bible.
It's literally incredible.
Yeah. And the one thing that really got me into that was we had a man visiting us who took a lot of interest in me. His name was John. And he met me from school one day and said, "I've got something I'd like you to do for me." So I said, okay. And he was very theatrical, and he put his arm through mine. Now, I'm talking here now in the 1960s, when men didn't do that. Yeah. They never did. They didn't hug. They shook hands. That was about it. And I felt really embarrassed. But he inspired me, and he said to me, "I've got something I'd like you to do. I want you to get up half an hour early every day and spend 15 minutes praying and 15 minutes reading the Bible. Will you do it?" Yeah. So I said yes. I guess at the time I thought, why did I say yes? But man, am I glad I did. So I used to get up 6:30 every morning, and I have done it almost every day since.
That's insane. So as a 13, 14-year-old?
Yeah. I got up half an hour early, 15 minutes prayer, 15 minutes reading the Bible.
Wow. How do you feel like that benefited you at that age and throughout?
Well, at the age, I guess it was a voyage of very slow discovery.
Yeah.
But I mean, I would say that I found that the more I read it, the more I got it, the more I understood what it was on about.
Yeah.
And it fascinated me to see how it all fitted together and what bit was doing what it was where. And I didn't understand loads of it, of course I didn't. But there were verses that God spoke to me about and told me to do things.
Yes.
And yeah, that's how I started reading the Bible. But it was the discipline. Some days it was just discipline, I think. But it was the discipline of getting up until not too long in, I actually enjoyed getting up.
Yeah.
I actually looked forward to getting up in the morning to go and spend time with God.
That's incredible. So that's such a healthy pattern for a 14-year-old. I feel like probably most people would say, yeah, sure. And then maybe like 2 days in, not sure about this.
Yeah.
Because it takes a while to break the sleeping pattern through, doesn't it?
It does.
Fair play. So I know you've spoken before about kind of your sixth form days and some of the opportunities that you had during sixth form. So I just wonder if you want to elaborate.
Yeah. I mean, what was good, I had to travel to school. It was a grammar school back in those days. It was 3 miles to travel, and I really enjoyed that, actually. By the time I got to sixth form, I used to walk. It took 45 minutes, but it gave me an opportunity to pray. And I learnt to meditate then, talk through with God something. So I'd wake up in the morning, I'd read the Bible, I'd think, okay, I don't quite get that bit. Right, I'll talk with God about that all day. So I'd go through whatever the problem was. And I just remember one of them. Why was Jesus silent when they were trying him before he went to the cross? Why didn't he just say, look, I'm the Son of God. You guys have got all this wrong. And I just remember poring over that, and it struck me, I think, on the way home from school in that day, that actually the reason he did it was because if he'd spoken up, he wouldn't have had to die. And then I would never have been saved. So I was jumping all the way home. But sixth form was great for me because I had a teacher an English teacher who was a Christian, but I didn't know, who gave us the opportunity. Well, we all had to do a talk, use of English it was called. And one of the subjects was why I believe in God. And I started off, we only had a 35-minute period to speak. And I took the whole 35 minutes telling my classmates about God. And she said, this teacher, would you like to carry on next time? I said, love to. So I had 2 35-minute periods to talk about why I believed in God. And on the back of that and several other things as well, 17 of my classmates came to hear me preach one Sunday.
That's amazing.
Which was just awesome.
One of the beauties of that kind of story and I guess why it's inspirational is because ultimately maybe we wouldn't look at like the 12-year-old, 13-year-olds as being capable of getting in and devouring the word at such an early age, or capturing the beauty of Jesus and understanding like who he is and coming into relationship with him. And so there's an invitation beyond kind of the 20-year-old, beyond the 30-year-old, beyond the 40-year-old, to say at any age, like God is accessible. Like we can come to know him. And ultimately, I guess like at 18, you probably wouldn't speak with the same joy and the same vision and the same understanding of who God is, unless you had cultivated for the past 4 years as a 14-year-old what it looked like to actually get in and invest in a personal relationship with Jesus. So that's really beautiful. Yeah. In regards to kind of your friends coming in to hear you preach then and around now, what do you think is really important for us to capture when obviously a Sunday experience of church is within our church community, and then obviously for the Bible studies in the week, or say for life group in the week or whatever, there's such joy in coming together, but life can then be hard, and life can, like in our friendship groups, can kind of be difficult, and they can kind of almost mold us in their likeness, but then we're in church family, we're in that likeness. And I guess one of the things that cuts through that is when your friends come to church. Yeah. And there's no hiding place. Like you've got to be consistent. Absolutely.
I mean, to me, that's always been the biggest turn off for people about church, is that people go to church on Sunday, speak church on Sunday, but don't live it the rest of the week. And for me, I found this out. My friends in school, because they'd heard me preach and they'd heard what I had to say, kept me really honest.
Yeah.
And looking back, that was absolutely brilliant. I mean, they'd make comments like, you'll probably win this table tennis, won't you, because God's on your side. Or they'd say, do you really think you should say that as a Christian? And I'd think, no, perhaps I shouldn't.
Yeah.
And it was really helpful. And what I learnt was very quickly that my readings every day, God would say something to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what I wanted to take with me into that day, to build into my life.
Yeah.
And I think it's brilliant. I love young people who want to get into the Word, to desire God. Because my passion for the Lord came because it was one Saturday, I remember, I started reading the Bible. I was probably about 17 or 18. It was before I came to Cardiff anyway. And I cried most of the day about what Jesus had done on the cross for me. Yeah. And that really inspired me to get into what he had done and who he was.
Amazing. So you just mentioned Cardiff, and we're sat here at the moment in Cardiff. Luton's a while away from Cardiff, and so what brought you here to this city?
Yeah, well, I came to Cardiff. I studied sciences at A-level, and applied to university. My parents really encouraged me to do that. Not many people went to university actually when I went, but they encouraged me to go to university. Cardiff was a good place to come. My dad was originally from Cardiff. My grandmother lived here. His mum lived here. It gave us a point of contact when I came. My brother lived here. So, so I applied to Cardiff, and actually Cardiff was the only one that accepted me in the end. So here I am.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. We got some interesting examples then from kind of your uni time with your brother, heading into a relatively dangerous environment together. And then over the space of 6 years, that namely is heading into the Iron Curtain. Yeah. Do you just want to briefly explain kind of what the Iron Curtain was, the situation around that, and then what your role was in that too?
The friend who I called John, because that was his name, he was the one who first got me interested in talking about what might be happening in what was then known very strongly as behind the Iron Curtain. The Iron Curtain is a physical barrier that existed running right the way down from Poland, right the way down towards Yugoslavia, that divided Western Europe from Eastern Europe. Eastern Europe was controlled largely by what was then the Soviet Union. Now Russia is the biggest part of that. And it was very repressive. They were atheistic. They determined that God would not be found anywhere. But there were a lot of Christians there who were struggling, who were finding life really hard. They got the worst jobs. Many of them couldn't go to university. They couldn't speak too openly about their faith. And my friend John used to go and visit them. Yeah. But he must have connected with somebody who they considered was undesirable. And for that reason, he was made person non grata and couldn't go. So I called him one day and said to him, look, these Christians who are behind the Iron Curtain, how can we help? He said, go and see them. So I was 18 at the time. My brother was 22. And we just got talking and praying together, and we didn't have a car. So how in the world were we going to get there? But the Lord opened doors all over the place. Somebody lent us a car, would you believe? 2 young guys.
It's amazing.
He lent us a car, and we went with 2 families, actually. There were 6 of us in a car made for 5. Back in the days when you didn't have to have seat belts, we made another seat in the middle with cushions, pillows, and other such things. We had a huge roof rack on the top, and we camped.
Sat on the roof.
And we camped all the way. It took us 3 days to get to what now is, it's called Czechia now, but with them was Czechoslovakia. Yeah. And we met up with some Christians there, and that started for me a 6-year time going behind the Iron Curtain with some quite scary times. Yeah. But a time of huge blessing to see how encouraged people were with the fact that we were interested in them. Yeah. From 18 till I was probably, 28, I think, something like that.
That's so cool. And in the mix of that is obviously your friend was like, we'll go and see her. Maybe for a generation of us, I'm not sure if this has been the case forever, when we feel like we're waiting on God for something real specific to come before we're actively engaged in serving.
Yeah.
But that doesn't sound like it was the case for that story, at least.
Yeah. No, I mean, for me, I was always looking to do something. We did camp work in the summer anyway. We were always doing something somewhere. We frequently preached out in the streets in open airs. We used to support. There used to be a lot of tent missions going on in Britain, and we'd go and help out in a tent mission. Every year I used to go to a series of Bible studies in a church that ran over 2 weeks. We were always doing something. I mean, I just say to people, get on and do something.
Yeah.
Find somebody to work with. Go with OM. Go with the beach mission. Go with whatever.
Yeah.
But do something. Go to another country. Yeah. See what happens in another country. It will inspire you. Yeah. And I think that's really what inspired me, was to see these. It challenged me, inspired me, changed my perspective on some things, because I didn't realize how much of our church life is cultural.
Yeah, for sure.
And how much is actually what the Bible says.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
What do you think are some of those things that it's left with you then?
It's left with me how blessed we are. That's one of the great things I picked up straight away, how blessed we are compared with so many people. Many of these people had been persecuted. Some of them had been imprisoned for their faith, and we'd found it so easy compared with them. I suppose that was one of the lasting things. The joy that they had. Some of them were quite poor. I mean, we weren't rich. I was a student, for goodness sake. But these people had a joy that we, seemed to me at the time, that we didn't quite have. And they were very, very welcoming. Yeah. They would love to have us in their homes. They'd give us anything that they had, even if they hadn't got much.
That's so good. And I guess around this time frame is where you met Sandra.
Yeah.
So talk to me about how that happened. What were your desires as a young guy regarding marriage or singleness or life, and what happened to be the case for you? Yeah,
I mean, genuinely, when I first came to university, I had no thoughts whatever of a girlfriend or marriage or anything else. Sure, I liked girls, but I really didn't have any desires for that. I thought that maybe God was calling me to a celibate life, where I just devote myself totally to Him alone, and that was how it would go. And I'd study the Bible and preach the Bible and talk to people, and that would be it. But very shortly after coming here, I spied her across a Bible study. Perhaps that was the Lord speaking to me about my future life, Bible studies, and with my wife, and. We just got to know each other a little bit better, and started going together. I had only been in Cardiff for, less than a year. Wow. Probably only about 9 months when we started seeing each other, courting as we were back in those days. Yeah. Sure.
Was that a long process or a short process?
No, it was a very short process. I mean, I prayed a lot about it, and she had too, and we prayed together about it. And both said, this is right, this is what God's calling us to do. I'm blessed in that, because a lot of people don't get that. And it's not, she was my first ever girlfriend, and I was her first ever boyfriend. And, we, thankfully, it worked really well for us.
Yeah, and has done ever since.
And has done ever since, we've been married 48 years now.
Yeah, amazing. So kids come on the scene quite quick?
Yeah.
So I think that was just a year after?
Yeah, Steve was born we married in 72. Steve was born in 73.
And how old were you then?
I was 24.
About 2 months.
I was 24.
I'm more happy with the start of what you said about potential of singleness. Let's just keep running. So, in the mix of that then, is there a vision for life? Kind of when, at that early age, when you come together, like you just started a family, just kind of, I guess, finished with uni or finished in uni, how does that work from a young age? I
mean, when I met Sandra, I was already going to Eastern Europe, so that sort of interrupted it. And she knew that I was going to go in that following year, and she would not be able to come with me then because she wasn't married, and it was just too difficult over there, the rooms we were staying in and whatever. It was a good thing for single guys, but it wasn't very good for married couples at that time. So I had one of those things set out before me. I'd also just training to be a teacher, and I started teaching as well. So the vision that we had really was to bring up our family and bring it up for the Lord, and to work hard in the church that we were part of. To say I had a particular vision, this is what I'm called to do. I knew I was called to preach. I knew that very early on, that God had given me a gifting that I really needed to use for him. And Sandra had been given that gift. I don't suppose actually she or I picked up how good she was at what we now call networking. At that particular time. But she always gave me the space to study the Bible. So even after we had 4 children, and my 4th child came when I was 32, so it was pretty busy during those times. She always gave me the space in the morning. She got the kids ready. She got them ready to go to school and all that kind of stuff. Gave me the space to study the Word and the opportunity to preach it.
That's wicked. That sounds like a commitment to consistency.
Yeah.
And I think that's so good. And that's one of the things I think going from, so I gave my life to Jesus at 18, so I guess missed out my schooling years, but then obviously that was at the start of uni and then studied for 5 years then. One of the things I thought, and one of the things I've seen in life, is that a lot of, say like school is like the next thing. You've got GCSEs, then you've got your A-levels, then you've got to try and get into uni. You go to uni, and then it's year by year. You need to get on to the next year, and then post-grad, and you're like, right, need to do this, need to do that. Obviously, I've been working for like 2 years now, and what I've realized from kind of my working life as opposed to my studying life is that it's not necessarily the next thing. It's actually, this stage is like 45 years. It's a long old time. And it's almost like easier to find consistency when you've just got short little sprints of like, right, we just got to get this year, so what are we going to do this year. And then it's like, whoa, I need to really be consistent in my approach, because if not, like I can just find myself wavering or just kind of floating about. And so that's really helpful that there was just like, I guess that's practice that you had from the age of 14. That was continuing the way throughout. And you were just ultimately together saying, even if we don't know the specifics of what we're going to do in life, we're just going to stay close to Jesus.
I think that's exactly right. I built into my life a discipline, as did Sandra. Her discipline was, I'm going to look after those children, and I'm eternally grateful to her for giving me the space to do that. That was really hard, harder than I think I thought at the time.
For sure.
Looking back, I can see how difficult it must have been for her. Because she was the key person in opening our home up. We had loads of people around our home all the time, even with our young kids. So, we'd be up first thing in the morning, 6:30 I was up. The kids got up, often with me, and they'd be downstairs and doing stuff while I was busy. I didn't have a study in those days. It was the dining table, and I'd sit there with my Bible. And looking back, I think that was good. I think it could be easy to shut yourself away in a study with the door closed so nobody can see what you're doing. And my kids were involved in it. I was laughing the other day because I picked up some handwritten notes I'd done, and they were scribbled all over. And I know it was my kids that did that when they were young. Steve's 47 now? And I think, whoa.
That's class. So I guess in that time frame, we're obviously now sat here, 2020. I mentioned, did you say 72? Is that right? Yeah. We
were married,
there's a long old time period in between that. I'm guessing there's been some difficult times, there's been some great times and times of joy. Let's just unpack then in that time frame. You called to be a preacher of the word, but also you said you just trained to be a teacher as well. And so your life pattern wasn't necessarily come outside of the world and build church as such, just as the full-time thing or a full-time goal, but to do both. And so how does that work? Like, what's that look like?
It's interesting because when I think I was 26, I really felt the Lord saying to me through the words of 1 Timothy 4, that passage that people know quite well, be in the word, read the word, go for it, be an example to people of your life. And I thought he was calling me into ministry. And then I realized it wasn't that. He was actually calling me to do that and still stay in work. And the great advantage of that as I look back is that whenever I encourage people to do something for the Lord, none of them could say, but it's okay for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I was working and I was giving my life to the Lord and I was doing lots of stuff. And I had a family. I had a reasonable sized family. 4 kids is quite a few.
Yeah.
And we had all the family pressures. We had all family life. We had in-laws and parents, and my dad wasn't very well at the time. My mum wasn't too well either. So we had all those responsibilities. And yeah, life was tiring. Life was hard. I mean, I wake up at 6:30 and go to bed sometimes at way gone midnight and have 6 more hours sleep, and the alarm would wake me up and I'll be off again.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. I know, even, I guess, from just the past 2 years of working and trying to serve in church, and man, there's tiredness involved.
Yeah.
And it can be hard to serve when you're physically tired. You may not necessarily even be like spiritually or emotionally tired. The physical body is limited.
Absolutely.
In what we can give. But I know that you committed to like an open home.
Yeah.
And you're still committed to that now, like with us guys who kind of form the group, but us as a church, and anyone really is other than coronavirus season. But beyond that, it's open door. Like, we're able to come, and I've been so blessed by that. And just what was that? What does that commitment look like? What has been a blessing about that? Like, what have you seen as a fruit and a result of just committing to say we're open to being good hosts?
I mean, the blessing's been huge, actually. It's been huge in all kinds of ways. We've worked with mainly younger people, but there's been an awful lot of young married couples who've come into our home. Some of them have found each other in our home. And that's a blessing in itself, isn't it? To have a forum where young people can actually get together and meet, so that Christian young people can actually marry. I mean, that's been a really important thing. But we've watched people grow. We've watched most of our family going on with the Lord, and not just being part of church, but being a key part of church, being passionate for Him. So family-wise, it's been great. One of the great things about having a lot of people around the home is that your own family benefit from that. Seeing all these people around. We've had Bible studies in our home. I can't remember when we first started. Probably I was in my early 30s. When we started doing Bible studies in our home, we did it every Tuesday night. We had anywhere between 4 and 40 young people around, mainly, the same sort of age group we're talking about here, between 15 and 30. And the Lord has just used it. I mean, I was listening for another event, the people who had actually come through our home, and there are pastors and there are teachers and there are elders in churches, there are missionaries. I met one girl in Spring Harvest who I hadn't met for years, who came up and said, "Peter and Sandra, great to see you. I'm working for Youth for Christ." And I thought, I don't even know who you are. And yet you'd been part of our home group.
That's so good. I mean, like, one of the blessings, I think, of being close to you guys is that anyone who knows you guys knows that your life is lived for the name and fame of Jesus, and not for the name and fame of Peter and Sandra. And that's so evident from you guys, your humility and just integrity as a couple. And man, if it was about you guys, you wouldn't do the costly things when no one's looking.
No.
But you've consistently done the costly things when no one's looking. And one of those things, I guess, is you mentioned previously about living Cabalva. Not in this talk, but from when we've been chatting, and about doing church in that local area. That you've lived in, and tell some stories of that, because I know there's some like exciting stories about just massive youth groups and stuff like that.
I mean, we lived we didn't actually live on the estate. We lived just off the estate. Okay. The estate was at the end of our road. The Gabalva estate, and we got to know loads of the people there, and every Friday, my brother, myself, and 2 or 3 other guys would go down to the local chip shop where young people used to meet. They used to meet outside and talk to them about the Lord, and it was really amazing. They were interested. Young people, I think even today now, are still interested in discussing God and who God is, and does He exist, and what does He do in lives. And we have a unique opportunity, particularly those who are younger, have this unique opportunity not just to talk about God, but to actually show him, to mirror him in the community. As a result of that, they said, "Oh, can we come to your church?" Well, to be honest, our church service Sunday evening wasn't really suitable for them. That's the truth of it. They would have stirred up so much. Well, you know how it is with young people. They wanted something a lot noisier. They wanted to be able to shout out and talk out, and our church wasn't geared for that. Yeah. So we had a special service afterwards for them, and we got over 60 of these young teenage guys coming in.
Incredible.
The sad thing is, I don't know any of them who came to the Lord.
Really? Yeah.
I looking back now, it was great to be able to talk with them and to preach to them. I even worked with them during my university holidays, but none of them, as far as I know, have come to know the Lord.
I guess like that time is just then an investment that you hand over to God.
Right. You can't save them yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you invest anyway.
Yeah. But I mean, we also had, Sandra was very good at this too, inviting families round to the house, people who weren't Christian people but had an interest. Yeah. And we used to have them round to have meals with us from time to time as well.
Wow. That's so cool. So we've built a picture of young Pete, slightly older Pete, married Pete, Pete with kids, Pete who's the teacher. Let's talk church life. What did church life look like for you in this kind of time period? Yeah,
I mean, I was brought up in a Brethren church, and the church I was part of, I became a leader in the church, one of the elders. Became actually the elder responsible for the teaching of the church. So we had a structure and a pattern. We sit down as elders and say, what does the church need to know? Okay, what do we do with this? Do we do subjects? Do we do books or whatever? That was part of my role, was to set the teaching pattern within the church, as well as to do quite a bit of the teaching too. That meant a little pastoral work. It's not my strength. So I did some of that, visiting folks or whatever, but by and large my role was teaching within the church. And I did that for, that's a good question, quite a few years. 20-something years.
Wow. Yeah. Was that in Kebab?
In Land of North, yeah.
Land of North. Okay,
yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. So we've got work locally in a church in Cardiff, but also you guys have had some very exciting global opportunities. Yeah. Whom I think a lot of people would love the location. Maybe not the work, but the location for sure. Let's talk about the Bahamas. Yeah. You received a call to go and said yes, obviously. But how did that come about?
Yeah, one of my great, now a man who I consider one of my mentors, who I knew but not knew very well. His name was Bill Davis. Everybody called him Brother Bill. He lived in Grangetown in Cardiff. Yeah. And I went to preach in the church that he came home to whenever he came home. He lived in the Bahamas but came home to Cardiff every year. And he came up to me afterwards and he said, bro, I really need you. I really need you to come to the Bahamas. Would you come? And initially I kind of thought, I don't know. It's a commitment. It sounds nice. But anyway, the Lord sort of prevailed on me to say, yeah, you really ought to go. So in 1995, when I was still teaching, so I had church work, family work, young people coming around the home, camp work. We added to that going to the Bahamas, and we went for 4 weeks initially. It's a long way to go. It's 4,500 miles. Yeah, sure. And we went to a little island where a church had just been re-established and had 12 people in it. And in that first year, we kind of fell in love with them and they with us. And they said, you must come back next year. So we did that. And we have seen that church grow from 12 to about 40. Cool. I baptized 12 of the folks there. And if I tell you that the island on which that church sits has only got 100 inhabitants, you begin to see the success rate. Yeah, it's incredible. In an island like that. It's just been lovely to see.
Yeah, that's such a blessing. That's such a blessing.
And we were there for 20 years then, going back and forward twice a year, going back to visit the folks, to encourage them, to preach, to visit. Yeah.
And then I guess one of the moments where you did feel called to make a kind of decision to walk away from teaching, to be able to do that, I guess, a bit more permanently.
Yeah. Yeah, it was because everything was too much. Something had to go. Yeah. I was in my 50s. and anybody in their thing had to go,
Yeah.
but not quite the same as you had in your 30s.
Yeah.
And the work we were involved in, both church-wise and in particular in the Bahamas, was becoming more intense. In the Bahamas, I would preach 4 times a week, every week. And because I kept going to the same 4 churches, because I really felt God wanted me to build into a few churches rather than spread thinly. And as a result of that, it meant a lot of work. And the truth was, I just didn't have the time to do it all. So we prayed an awful lot about it. And an opportunity came up with what was then Big Ideas that became Ignite, that's now morphed into Message Wales.
Yeah.
An opportunity came up with them to work with them as well, starting a leadership academy for young people, which is just where I was. Yeah, so we really felt God was calling us.
That's
In
great.
fact, very powerfully he called us.
Yeah, I think I guess you look back at people's lives and think, like obviously they're incredible stories when they unravel in a whole kind of tapestry of someone's life. But at like 20, you wouldn't know what was to come for your life. Like you would have no idea that God would call you just something specific, age 70 or 71, or you wouldn't know about the group now or any of those things. What tips would you give to younger people in the younger generation to pursue the heart of God, who want to pursue the heart of God and want to do that well? What tips would you give them? Because, man, I know that for my life, I have no idea what's to come. I think we learned that this year with 2020. Like my generation maybe felt like the world was at our feet, and then actually not even our local shop was open.
Yeah.
And so we just have no idea what the future holds.
Yeah.
But one, we know the one who holds the future. We know he has a plan. We know that we're called to walk closely with him, and there's such joy in that. Like, what promises from God or what passages of scripture have you held really tightly to just kind of your whole life? And how's that changed kind of the way you've walked? And just what advice would you have for people who are young, who have no idea what's to come?
Yeah.
Literally no idea.
Yeah.
The good and the bad, all of it mixed in. Like, what advice would you give?
When I first started reading the Bible, I was really taken with that verse in Philippians 1:21.
Yeah, definitely.
For me to live is Christ. I didn't quite get the to die is gain bit, but for me to live is Christ is what Paul said. So I said, okay, Lord, I'm going to give my life to you. I want to live for you. During that period, I've always suffered with problems with my chest, been asthmatic, had a lot of bronchial asthma, was really quite ill in my teenage years with it. And one time I thought this would be the end of my life. I really thought I wasn't going to make it through the night because I was so short of breath. And the Lord just encouraged me with the verses from 2 Corinthians 12, where he said, my grace is sufficient for you. And I probably shared this with a lot of people in the past, but one of the reasons why I know that I'm nothing special is because I have a bad chest.
Yeah.
And that keeps reminding me that I have to rely on the Lord absolutely, totally. I'm nothing without him. I'm nothing physically, I'm nothing spiritually, I'm nothing emotionally, I'm nothing. And he taught me that with that verse of scripture, that he just encouraged me to say, Lord, your grace is going to see me through in every situation. And I am going to do what you've called me to do. I'm going to live for you. I'm going to live for you, Lord. Whatever it is, I'm going to live for you. And I would encourage young people to live for Jesus. Live for Jesus. Make him top priority. Because you do that, you've got to listen to him. You can't say, I'm living for Jesus, if you never listen to him. I mean, it's one of the reasons why marriages break down. Because couples don't listen to each other. Part of my problem is I don't always listen to my wife. But if you're going to walk with Jesus, you've got to listen to him. So get into his word. Keep getting into his word. Even if you don't understand it, keep reading it. And just let God pull out something for you. A phrase, an expression, something he just puts on your heart. So listen to him. And when you've listened to him, do what he asks you to do. One of the passages that got me going on that was John 21, where Jesus says to Peter, after Peter's denied him, do you love me? Well, if you love me, here's a job for you. Go and feed my sheep. Go and do it. Don't tell the Lord you love him if you're not willing to do anything for him. It's just words.
Yeah.
So hear what he's got to say to you, and he will open the doors. He will take you in different directions. He may call you to stay where you are for all of your life.
Yeah.
Be consistent. Know it's his calling.
Yeah.
Have that sense of vision. I mean, I've been able to travel. I had no idea that I would ever do anything like go to the Bahamas or New Zealand or Africa. I had no idea I'd do any of those things.
Yeah.
But I praise the Lord that he gave me the heart to be consistent.
Yeah.
So I say to young people, love the Lord passionately, listen to his word, go where he calls you to go.
That's so good. And yeah, that decision to, before anything else, and as a priority, seek the face of the Lord and just be before him every day.
Yeah.
Is a centering prayer, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It's definitely a centering prayer. And that's all we've got, isn't it?
It's all we've got.
That's absolutely all we've got. Like, that's our first prayer. Whenever we do anything, before we go into any situation, if we're seeking the face of God and that's our desire, then nothing else matters.
Yeah.
Nothing else can shape that.
Nothing else matters. Yeah.
That's what matters. Life now, then.
Yeah, I mean,
Let's finish up
in
with what
2015, the Lord said, you've got to leave the Bahamas. You've got to come back home again. And it wasn't as difficult as I thought it was going to be. We had made huge relationships with so many people, and it's been really good to see many of the church leaders who are there now that we have been able to encourage and help along. And the year we left, a guy called Tyrone sat at the back of the church. I didn't know who he was, and I preached almost my last Sunday there, and he came up to me afterwards and said, I want to become a Christian. And I thought, whoa, thank you, Lord. This is the seal on the fact that you've got people here and you don't need me here anymore. And we came home 2015, came to a different church, believed God was calling us to come to the church that is called New Life Church, where we are currently sitting. Yeah. And the Lord said, I've got some work for you to do. And it's scary when you leave a church that you've been in for a while, where people know you, to come to a church where very few people know you. Yeah. But the Lord's opened doors in so many ways. I can tell you this, at the beginning of this year, this COVID year, I was quite nervous because of my chest problems, and the doctor told me I had to shield. I'm now clinically extremely vulnerable. That's what they now call me. And I thought to myself at the beginning of the year, if I get COVID, I probably won't see the year out. But Lord, you know, and I'm just trusting you. And as I was driving to a church to preach, and the clouds were really dark and horrible, he said to me, you remember that hymn? The clouds you so much dread are big with mercy and will break with blessing on your head. That's my promise. And now we're coming almost out of 2020. God, we're in the new year. As we've come out of 2020, I look back and I say, wow, what the Lord has done during 2020. Not the least, providing this means of us talking to more people online and opening the deeper channel. And it's just been awesome. Talking with people on Zoom every Monday, talking to my grandkids throughout the whole of March, April, May, June, July, every school day doing Bible time with them. I mean, it's just been awesome. Be where God wants you to be, and he'll open doors. If you're feeling a little bit flat in your life, get in with the Lord. Yeah. If you're thinking, what can I do? Get to the Lord, because he's got plenty for you to do. Yeah. And then start doing something.
Yeah, that's so good. Literally, the God of no limits.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, how can you be limited by your own creation?
Yeah.
You can't be.
You can't be.
And so our prayers really need to be bigger.
Yeah.
Our lives need to be more devoted, and we'll just see things, right? Like, we'll see God move. So now 71?
Yeah.
71? Get that bit right. In the time frame that you've been in Cardiff and I guess the bit before that in Luton, what do you think you've seen change, and what do you think is the same about people's desires, maybe Christian desires, but also like the non-believing world as well. Like just kind of navigate what has changed in that time and what stayed the same.
Yeah. Before I answer that, let me just say one more thing, because I think this is quite important within our discussion. When I was in my 30s, or maybe, probably in my 40s, yeah, I guess I was in my 40s, and Steve was beginning to get into the Word himself. My son Steve was getting into the Word. As I was walking home from school one day, the Lord audibly said to me, "You and Stephen are going to go to work. Are going to work together on some project that's going to be important." Steve's 47, I am 71, and this year God has pulled us together in something that I believe was what he prophesied to me at that particular time.
Wow.
So partly the reason why this has happened is because God said it, and I've just held on to that thinking, Lord, when, Lord? I have known it wasn't my time to go to heaven until it happened. I don't know if it is now, but I do know that God pulled us into this particular ministry together.
And I'm blessed just to be a tag-along.
And it's just awesome. It's awesome being able to work with, it's awesome working with anybody in the work of the Lord. It really is, but it's been awesome working with your family in that.
Yeah, so good.
But as in answer to your proper question,
yes, go for it.
what has changed? When I was growing up, if I invited somebody to come along to our church, to a Sunday school or a kids club or something like that, they would say yeah, and they'd come. My dad started 3 Sunday schools, and each one of them had over 100 kids in. It was easy to get people basically to come to church. I don't think people found Jesus any more easily, but regularly in every church that I was associated with, people got saved. That's changed definitely. People are now very cynical. Most people actually are not really cynical, they just don't know. Yeah. They don't understand what God's about. They don't understand the Bible. And we have a massive mission to do to get out there to tell them about how wonderful Jesus is. So I think that's one of the big things that I've noticed that's changed. I would say there are still a good group of people, as there have always been, who are dedicated to the Lord. And that's amazing. I was brought up with a group of young people, all of whom, every one of whom, has really become a key worker in the area where God's put them. Yeah. I think that probably isn't quite the same. Maybe because there's not so many young people who know the Lord these days. Maybe there's so many other distractions in the world around. I don't know. I mean, I was brought up in the day when there was scarcely television for a start off, let alone all the stuff that there is today. Yeah. So that's changed.
Sure. And then any final encouragements as we wrap up? It may be the same as what you've already reassured throughout. But yeah.
Well, the biggest encouragement to me, I've shared this with Steve recently. The biggest encouragement to me is that 71, I'm still finding new things out about the Lord. Yeah. I've still got excited today about something that the Lord spoke to me about. Yeah. And that to me is just awesome. That it doesn't matter how old you are or how long you've been studying the Bible, you'll always, always, always find something that will inspire you, that will get you excited. Be passionate about the Lord. Make him your chief aim. Yeah. And don't let anything else interrupt that particular flow. The Lord will take you where he wants you to go, to be the person he wants you to be, if you'll just let him do it.
Amen. I can't better that. That sounds like a very good place to end. Thank you so much, Peter. Thank you for yours and Sandra's work in our community and for the guys of my generation, but for the guys of generations before me and the girls of generations before me as well. And we're also thankful to be able to receive from so much of your wisdom and knowledge. The next episode that Peter will be on will be the first one that kind of is in the same format as the other podcast episodes as we get stuck into Leviticus. We're both excited about that. So please do check out the website and subscribe just to our email alerts. And then every Sunday at 4 p.m., you'll be sent a message with links for the weekly content. And you can get stuck in and get involved and get stuck into God's Word. Thank you so much and see you again.
Bye. Brilliant.
Thank you.